It began on a stretch of quiet countryside, just outside a city that had grown too quickly for its own good. My family's farm sat on a rolling 42 acres of fertile land, a patchwork of wheat, old barns, and memories layered over generations. My grandfather bought it after the war, my father expanded it, and when both passed, the land came to me. I wasn't a farmer by trade anymore, but I kept the property running out of respect, leasing a few acres to neighbors and maintaining the rest for peace and privacy. For years, the city expanded like a hungry vine. Subdivisions sprouted across old meadows, malls replaced forests, and roads stitched through once quiet hills. But I never imagined one of those roads would end up crossing my land. It started subtly, surveyor stakes in the ground, small flags of orange and blue dotting the edges of my north field. I thought it was a mistake. After all, no one from the city had contacted me. No letters, no calls, no notices. But then came the heavy machinery. Bulldozers rolled in early one morning, carving through soil my family had cultivated for decades. At first, I thought about storming out there, waving my deed, demanding answers. But something told me to wait. I photographed everything, documented every inch. The trucks, the workers, the concrete mixers. They were so sure of themselves, moving across the property like they owned it. Within weeks, the road was done, a smooth black ribbon cutting through my golden wheat fields. It connected two suburban developments that had been growing toward each other for years. A perfect shortcut, convenient, profitable, and, according to the city, public infrastructure. But there was one tiny detail they had missed. The land wasn't theirs. I checked my deed again and again. The boundaries were clear. That road sat squarely inside my property line. When I called the city's planning department, I was told the project had been approved through right-of-way acquisition. But there had been no sale, no easement, no signature, nothing. That's when I realized someone had made a very expensive mistake. I didn't confront them right away. Instead, I spent the next few weeks quietly collecting everything I needed. Copies of construction permits, project maps, even drone footage of the finished road. My grandfather used to say, "A smart farmer doesn't shout when the fox enters the henhouse. He waits until he knows where it's hiding." By the time the ribbon-cutting ceremony came around, the mayor stood smiling on television, calling the new road a symbol of progress. I stood at the edge of my field watching cars roll over what was still legally mine. That's when the idea took root. I wasn't going to destroy the road. I wasn't even going to block it. I was going to make them pay rent. And by the time I was done, the same city that bulldozed my farm would own me every single year. By the time the first snow dusted across the new asphalt, the city's progress had already turned into my opportunity. The road was open, lined with fresh signage, traffic lights, and manicured sidewalks. Hundreds of cars passed through every morning, commuters who had no idea they were driving across private land. While the rest of the town saw the project as a success story, I was busy turning it into a case file. Every piece of paper mattered now. Every permit, every public record, every construction photo. I hired a quiet, meticulous property attorney, the kind who preferred winning to talking. When I laid the deed on his desk, his eyebrows lifted slightly. The city hadn't bought the land. They hadn't leased it either. There was no record of eminent domain being exercised, no compensation paid. In legal terms, that meant one thing. The road was built on trespass property. My attorney advised patience. He told me that rushing to sue would make me look hostile, and that public sympathy tends to favor progress over personal rights. So instead, we built the case slowly, step by step, like setting a trap. We notified the city through certified letters, not once, but 3 times, informing them of the encroachment. Each one was met with silence. Then, months later, a carefully worded email arrived from the city's legal department, stating they were reviewing the claim. That email became our first piece of leverage. Silence meant acknowledgement. The city assumed I was bluffing, that I would eventually give up. After all, most people don't fight City Hall. They figured I wouldn't have the resources or patience to take on bureaucracy. But they didn't know the history behind that land, how every inch had been fought for and kept across generations. To them, it was dirt. To me, It was legacy. When the case finally reached court, I remember how small the city's lawyers looked, overconfident but unprepared. They claimed public necessity and inadvertent boundary overlap. But the maps told a different story. They hadn't just overlapped. They had cut straight through. Their own documents betrayed them. The judge's expression shifted from annoyance to disbelief as the evidence stacked up. I wasn't asking for damages or demolition or removal. I simply wanted a formal acknowledgement and compensation for use. The word my lawyer used was easement lease. It was elegant, simple, and devastatingly effective. Instead of paying me once for the land, the city would pay rent every year indefinitely for as long as the road existed. The judge ruled in my favor. The decision sent ripples through the entire region. Suddenly, the city found itself paying rent to a farmer for a public road they built without permission. News crews came knocking. Headlines called it the farmer who outsmarted City Hall. The city tried to save face, claiming it was a mutual agreement, but everyone knew the truth. They had been caught red-handed. But for me, the story wasn't over. Because when the first rent check arrived, neat, printed, and signed by the city treasurer, I noticed something interesting. The road had spurred even more development. And that's when I realized they were going to need more land. After the court ruling, things on my farm changed, quietly but completely. The road that once symbolized loss had become a steady stream of income. Every car that rolled across that asphalt was a reminder that I had won, not just a legal case, but a principle. The city now paid me rent for using what they had taken, and they would continue to do so for as long as that road existed. But victory has a way of attracting attention. Developers began circling like vultures, drawn to the growing traffic and new visibility. What had once been the edge of town was now prime real estate. Grocery stores, gas stations, and subdivisions sprouted along the stretch, feeding off the convenience of that road, my road. One morning, I received a letter from a construction company proposing to buy 10 acres along the roadside. They called it a partnership opportunity. They offered numbers that would have made sense 10 years ago, but now the land's value had tripled, maybe more. I didn't respond. I simply filed the letter away, the same way I had done with the city's old permits. Every piece of paper was a breadcrumb in the trail I was building. It wasn't long before the city reached out again. This time, not with lawyers, but with planners. They wanted to expand the road, add a turn lane, maybe even a roundabout. They described it as a collaborative improvement. The irony almost made me laugh. They were asking permission now. I let them speak, let them send their proposals and drafts. Each new plan showed the same thing. They needed more of my land. Just a few feet on either side, but legally it was still mine. Every inch they needed meant more negotiation, more leverage, more rent. My lawyer drew up a new lease agreement that was 3 times the original rate. If they wanted expansion, they could pay accordingly. The city hesitated at first, trying to negotiate down. But time wasn't on their side. Construction deadlines loomed, and every day of delay meant more cost for them, not me. They eventually signed, sealing their second long-term lease. I had gone from landowner to landlord, from ignored farmer to the person the city literally could not build without. Soon after, neighboring landowners came to me for advice. Some had lost acres to other infrastructure projects, some had signed quick sale deals they now regretted. My story had become something of a local legend, proof that standing your ground could pay off, literally. The irony deepened as property values soared. The same officials who once ignored me were now sending holiday cards and invitations to community growth meetings. My farm, once seen as an obstacle, had become the centerpiece of their progress. But I wasn't done, because as new roads and utilities expanded outward, I noticed another small survey marker, this time near the southern edge of my land. Different color, different project. It looked like the start of something even bigger. And if history had taught me anything, it was this. When a city starts planting flags, opportunity isn't far behind. By the time the city marked my southern field, I had learned their habits better than they knew their own maps. Every project started the same way. Whispers of public improvement, quiet survey work, and the slow, creeping arrival of machines. But this time, I was ready long before they were. The new project was massive, a bypass intended to connect the industrial district to the main highway. On paper, it was supposed to ease congestion and stimulate regional growth. In reality, it was a multi-million-dollar expansion that would slice through farmland like a blade. I watched the plans unfold from a distance, knowing exactly where this road would go. And just like before, part of that proposed route ran straight across my property. But this time, there would be no surprise, no trespass, no courtroom. Instead, I took control before they could even move a shovel of dirt. I contacted their engineering firm directly, not as a landowner pleading for fairness, but as a landlord negotiating a commercial lease. I already had the legal precedent from the first road. The city was still bound to those terms. When they saw the paperwork, their tone changed instantly. What had once been arrogance turned into cautious respect. They knew they couldn't repeat their mistake, so they offered to collaborate, requesting a meeting to discuss mutually beneficial terms. I smiled at the phrasing. They finally understood the balance of power. I agreed to lease the new section at double the rate of the previous road. The city tried to argue that the scale of the project should earn them a discount, but I reminded them that larger projects only meant more liability and maintenance. They folded. The deal was signed within weeks, with clauses guaranteeing annual rent increases tied to inflation. Soon, the bypass construction began, this time with proper boundaries, legal filings, and signed contracts. For the first time, the city's machines rolled across my fields with permission. Each hum of an excavator, each pour of asphalt, sounded less like intrusion and more like income. The irony was poetic. 2 major roads now ran through my farm, both owned by the city, both paying rent to me. I didn't have to plant another crop or sell another acre. The land, once seen as outdated and forgotten, had become a living investment. Years passed, and my story spread far beyond our county. I received letters from farmers, homeowners, even small-town shopkeepers who had faced similar treatment. People inspired to stand up for their rights, to understand the fine print of their deeds. One afternoon, as I walked along the old North Road, the first one they built, I noticed the traffic again. Thousands of cars rushing past, people chasing their schedules, unaware they were crossing ground that had once been stolen and reclaimed. The sun glinted off the asphalt, and for a brief moment, it almost looked like the surface of water, rippling with light, steady with motion. The city called it progress. I called it justice, slow, quiet, and lasting. Because every year, without fail, the checks still come. The rent for their roads, the tribute for their oversight. The system that once ignored me now funds me, brick by brick, lane by lane. And as long as those roads remain, my family's land will never stop earning. It's not revenge. It's legacy. A legacy paved in asphalt and paid for by the city that thought they could take it for free.